Welcome to the peaceful space of sleep-friendly science, where we'll explore the quiet revolution that first brought a whisper of color to an ancient, all-green world. Let your mind drift back to a silent, verdant landscape, a time before the first petal had ever unfurled. Imagine a world dressed only in shades of green and brown. Together, we'll gently explore the profound yet subtle evolutionary shift that introduced the first splash of color to our planet. Now, settle in, take a deep breath, and let the soft sounds guide you as we begin tonight's journey into the unknown. Section 1. The Verdant Silence. Let the world around you begin to fade. Let the sounds of your room become distant, like echoes from another shore. With each breath you take, feel yourself becoming lighter, untethered from the day. Breathing in a sense of calm. Breathing out a release of all that is heavy. We are about to travel back, not just in years but in epochs, to a time when our planet was a different being altogether. Imagine your consciousness as a single weightless seed, drifting on the currents of time, spiraling gently downward, further and further into the deep past. You land softly in a world bathed in an almost overwhelming green. This is Earth, perhaps 300 million years ago, long before the continents settled into the shapes we know. The air here is different. It's thick, humid, and heavy with oxygen, carrying the rich, loamy scent of damp earth, of decaying ferns, and the clean, sharp perfume of resin. It is the smell of life, but a life of a singular character. Look around you. There is no grass beneath your feet. Instead, vast, lush carpets of moss cover the ground and climb the trunks of ancient trees, their texture like deep green velvet. They are the planet's soft, living skin. Above you, a canopy of giants filters the sunlight into dappled, shifting patterns on the forest floor. But these are not the oaks or maples you know. These are the planet's first true forests, an architectural marvel of unfamiliar forms. Here, colossal tree ferns unfurl their fronds, each one a perfect, repeating fractal of green lace, some as large as a modern house. They are magnificent but silent. They do not offer blossoms to the sky. They reproduce in a more ancient, more secretive way. On the undersides of their leaves, they hold their future not in seeds, but in spirits of fine, almost invisible dust. When the time is right, they release this dust into the air, a cloud of infinitesimal hopes, a million tiny chances cast to the wind and the water, each one carrying the potential for a new fern, if only it can find a welcoming, damp place to land. It is a strategy of sheer, overwhelming numbers, a testament to life's tenacity. But it is a gamble, a whisper of a promise with no guarantee. Beside them stand the lycophyte trees, the club mosses of this lost world, scaled up to impossible proportions. Their trunks are covered in geometric, diamond-shaped patterns, like the skin of a reptile, reaching 100 feet into the thick air. And there, near the water's edge, are the horsetails, giant versions of the humble plants you might find today. Here, they are titans, their jointed, bamboo-like stems creating dense, shadowy groves. They, too, trust their future to the wind, releasing their spores in quiet, unseen puffs. This world is a symphony of textures. The feathery delicacy of the fern, the plushness of the moss, the rigid, patterned bark of the lycopods. It is a world of shades: emerald, olive, jade, lime, forest green, all layered upon the rich, dark browns of wet soil and decaying wood. It is a world of immense, quiet, architectural beauty. But as you listen, you notice what is missing. Listen closely. You can hear the sigh of the wind as it moves through the giant fronds. You can hear the drip of water from leaf to leaf. You might hear the distant, heavy tread of an early amphibian, or the scuttling of a dragonfly with a wingspan as wide as a hawk's. But you do not hear the hum of a bee. You do not hear the gentle flutter of a butterfly's wings. The air is empty of those familiar, busy sounds, because here, in this verdant silence, there is nothing for them. And as you look, really look, you see the other great absence. There is no crimson, no violet, no splash of sunny yellow or delicate pink. The entire world, from the horizon to the forest floor, is a masterpiece woven only in greens and browns. It is a planet without a single petal. This is the world of the gymnosperms, the next great step in the evolution of plants. These are the ancestors of our modern conifers, cycads, and the lonely, ancient ginkgo. The word gymnosperm means naked seed, and it is a beautiful, literal description. Unlike the spore-bearers, these plants have evolved the miracle of the seed, a tiny, self-contained life support system, a packed lunch for the embryo within, giving it a much greater chance of survival. But their seeds are naked, unprotected by an ovary, not enclosed within a fruit. Look at the ancient conifer tree. It does not produce a flower. Instead, it creates a cone, a simple, woody, functional structure. To reproduce, it follows the old ways, puts its faith entirely in the wind, produces pollen, a staggering amount of it. On a dry, breezy day, these ancient forests would have released their future into the air in great, golden yellow clouds. A storm of pollen, so thick it would turn the sky hazy, blanketing the entire landscape in a fine, generative dust. It was a strategy of immensity, a shotgun blast aimed at the world, hoping that a very few, of these trillions of grains would, by pure chance, find their way to a female cone on a distant tree. It is a functional system. It has to be. It has populated the world with these solemn, stoic giants. But it is a system of immense waste. For every grain of pollen that finds its target, billions fall uselessly upon the ground, upon the water, upon the backs of unhelpful reptiles. It is an act of reproduction based on blind luck and brute force. So, rest here for a moment, in this silent, green, and flowerless world. Feel its patient, ancient rhythm, the slow, deep time it represents. A world of magnificent life, of towering forests and incredible resilience. But it is a world holding its breath, a world with a quiet, unanswered question hanging in the thick, humid air. How can this process, this vital dance of life, become more intimate, more certain, more efficient? There is a space here, an evolutionary opening, waiting for a new idea. A quiet stage, set for a revolution that has not yet begun. A revolution that will, in time, paint this silent, green canvas with all the colors we have ever known. Section 2. A whisper on the wind. Stay here, in the deep, resonant quiet of this ancient forest. Let your breath remain slow and even, a gentle tide rising and falling. The question we left hanging in the air lingers, a subtle tension in the otherwise peaceful scene. The question of intimacy, of connection. For now, the only go-between, the only matchmaker in this world of giants, is the wind. And the wind is a fickle messenger. It has no loyalty. It has no memory. It is a force of pure physics, a river of air flowing from high pressure to low, heedless of the precious cargo it is asked to carry. Feel it now, a soft sigh that begins far, far away, over a vast primordial ocean. It moves across the water, gathering moisture, and finally reaches the shore of this supercontinent. It drifts inland, a vast, invisible current, a courier with no destination in mind. It slips through the tight groves of giant horsetails, their hollow stems creating a low, mournful whistle. It tumbles over the great, spreading canopies of the tree ferns, rustling a million tiny leaves in a sound like distant rain. And then, it arrives at a forest of ancient conifers, the gymnosperms, standing stoic and patient. They have been waiting for this. For a dry day, for a steady breeze. They have spent immense energy, drawn up nutrients from the deep earth, and harnessed the light of a younger sun, all to create a cloud of golden dust. Their pollen. Imagine you are small enough to see this moment up close. You see the male cones, modest and functional, opening their scales. And with the next caress of the wind, they release their hold. It is not a gentle puff. It is an explosion, a silent, golden detonation. The air fills with a haze of life, a storm of microscopic grains, each one a vessel of potential, a tiny, sleeping giant carrying half the blueprint for a new tree. For a moment, the forest is transformed. Sunlight, slanting through the canopy, catches this cloud and turns the air into a shimmering, golden spectacle. It looks like magic, like alchemy, but it is a magic of brute force, a spell cast with overwhelming numbers in the hope of a single success. Now, let your consciousness attach itself to one single grain of pollen. You are infinitesimally small, a speck of dust among trillions. You are lifted from the cone, your connection to your parent tree severed forever. You are now at the mercy of the air. You tumble and drift, caught in the invisible eddies and currents. Below you, the world is a tapestry of green and brown. You are a whisper of a promise, a question looking for an answer. Where are you trying to go? Your destination is so specific. It is a female cone, an ovule, perhaps on another tree of your same species, miles away. This cone is not bright or showy. It is a simple, woody structure, almost indistinguishable from the branch it sits on. It is a target smaller than a pinhead in a landscape that stretches for thousands of miles. The wind carries you onward. You drift over a vast swamp, its dark water reflecting the hazy sky. Thousands of your fellow travelers fall from the sky here, landing uselessly on the water's surface. A golden film that will simply dissolve, their genetic promise unfulfilled. The wind lifts you higher. You pass over a herd of early, sprawling reptiles, their skin leathery and tough. More of your brethren land on their backs, a dusting of gold on gray hides, only to be brushed off or washed away in the next rain. The journey is long. Days might pass. You are carried up into the colder, thinner air, then sink back down toward the warm, humid forest. You are one of billions, a single ticket in a lottery with astronomical odds. The sheer mathematics of it are staggering. For this system to work at all, the tree must produce a quantity of pollen that is almost incomprehensible. It is the biological equivalent of shouting a secret into a hurricane and hoping the right person, a mile away, will hear you. This is the great inefficiency of wind pollination, or anemophily as it is called. The energy cost is immense. The parent tree is pouring its life force into creating this golden cloud, 99.999% of which will go to waste. It will become food for mites, it will settle on barren rock, it will fall into the sea. It is a strategy born of necessity, but it is a profoundly lonely and imprecise way to create the next generation. It also means that these trees must live close together. The dense forest is their best chance. A solitary conifer on a windswept plain has almost no hope. Its genetic whispers will simply be lost in the vastness, its lineage ending in a silent golden carpet around its own feet. The system limits diversity, it encourages monocultures, great swathes of the same kind of tree, all shouting their genetic code into the wind at the same time. Feel the deep patience of this world. The plants that live here have time. Evolution works on a scale we can barely imagine. But even within this slow geologic time, a system so wasteful, so imprecise, represents an opportunity. problem waiting for a solution. Nature, in its relentless, creative trial-and-error way, is always searching for a better path, a more elegant way. How could this process be improved? How could that single grain of pollen, our tiny, drifting vessel of life, be guided? How could it be delivered, not by a careless, indifferent force like the wind, but by a messenger who is actively seeking the target? A messenger who could be paid for their services, ensuring they go from the right origin to the right destination. The connection needs to be more direct, less of a shout, and more of a whisper spoken directly into an ear. The vast, public broadcast of pollen needs to become a private, targeted delivery. For that to happen, a new relationship must be forged. A treaty must be signed between the kingdom of plants and another kingdom of life entirely. The stage is set. The problem is clear. The world is a sea of green, waiting for a bridge to be built between one plant and another. The wind has proven too unreliable. The answer will not come from the air. It will come from the creatures that scuttle and crawl upon the forest floor and among the leaves. The small, often overlooked beings who are about to be offered a deal that will change the face of the planet forever. Section 3. The Unwitting Couriers. Bring your awareness down from the vast, sighing canopy, away from the impersonal currents of the wind. Let your focus drift gently downward, past the giant, woody trunks, past the sweeping fronds, and settle on the forest floor, in the world of the small. Here, in the damp, fragrant leaf litter and on the bark of ancient trees, another kingdom of life is thriving. This is the kingdom of the insects. They are the original pioneers. Life had already conquered the land, but these small creatures were mastering its every niche. They were here long before the dinosaurs, and they would be here long after. Imagine them now, not as pests, but as the planet's tiny, tireless engineers, living fossils moving through a world we can only dream of. There are ancient, silent cockroaches, navigating the shadows. There are giant dragonflies, their iridescent wings catching the dappled light as they hunt. And crawling with a slow, deliberate strength, there are the beetles. Beetles are an ancient lineage, survivors of multiple mass extinctions. Their armored bodies a testament to their resilience. In this green and flowerless world, they are everywhere. They are the decomposers breaking down fallen logs. They are the predators hunting smaller creatures in the moss. And, most importantly for our story, they are the herbivores, the eaters of plants. Let's focus on one such beetle. See it in your mind's eye, a creature perhaps the size of your thumb, its carapace a dark, polished black, shimmering with a faint, oily rainbow. It moves not with the frantic energy of a modern fly, but with a steady, methodical purpose. Its world is not one of bright, beckoning colors, for there are none to see. Its world is one of texture, of moisture, and most importantly, of scent. It navigates by the chemical whispers of the world, searching for its next meal. And what is there for it to eat? It might chew on the soft, new growth of a fern. It might burrow into the decaying heartwood of a fallen lycopod. But some plants offer something particularly attractive. Remember our gymnosperms, our ancient conifers, with their naked, unprotected seeds resting on the scales of a cone. To our beetle, this cone is a potential feast. It is a concentration of nutrients, of starches and proteins. Our beetle, guided by the faint scent of resin and plant tissue, makes its way up the rough bark of a conifer. It is not looking for a flower. It does not know what a flower is. It is simply hungry. It reaches a branch where the tree's reproductive organs are clustered. Here are the male cones, which have recently shed their golden clouds of pollen into the wind. And nearby are the female cones, slightly larger, their scales slightly open, waiting for a lucky grain of pollen to drift inside. At the base of each ovule, each naked, potential seed, some of these ancient plants had a secret weapon. Not for pollination, but for catching it. They produced a tiny, sticky droplet of fluid, a pollen drop, designed to act like flypaper, snagging any passing pollen grains from the air. This drop was rich in sugars, a tiny bead of liquid energy. To our wandering beetle, this is an irresistible prize. It crawls onto the female cone, a clumsy, armored guest. It is not delicate. It tramples over the sensitive structures, its only goal to reach that sweet, sticky drop of liquid or to chew on the soft tissue of the cone itself. While it is eating, something remarkable happens. The pollen from the male cones, the pollen that the tree had intended for the wind, is everywhere. It's a fine, sticky dust that covers the branches, the leaves, and now our beetle. The golden powder adheres to its legs, to the hairs on its underside, to the smooth, curved surface of its carapace. The beetle is now coated in the very essence of the tree's future, but it is completely, blissfully unaware. It is simply a messy eater. Having had its fill, it prepares to move on. It spreads its hard outer wings, the elytra, and with a buzz, launches into the thick, humid air, still searching for its next meal. It flies not with the directed purpose of a honeybee, but with the same random, bumbling trajectory as before. It is still following the subtle chemical trails of food, and by chance, its senses lead it to another conifer of the same species. It smells the same promise of food, of sugary sap, of soft cone tissue. It lands, once again, on a female cone, ready to feast. And here the quiet miracle occurs. As the beetle crawls around, clumsy and hungry, some of the pollen grains that were stuck to its body from the first tree brush off. They fall onto the sticky pollen drop of this new cone. They touch the ovule. In a single, accidental moment, a connection has been made. Pollination, not by the indifferent wind, but by a living creature. An act of pure, dumb luck, born from a beetle's hunger. This was not a partnership. It was not a deal. It was a coincidence. The beetle was an unwitting courier, an accidental matchmaker. The plant was a victim of theft that, by sheer chance, resulted in a reproductive victory. For every 1,000 beetles that simply ate the cone and destroyed the seeds, maybe one, just one, accidentally carried the pollen to its intended destination. But in the slow, patient, calculating world of evolution, one is enough. Nature, the patient tinkerer, notices a pattern. A plant that is slightly more attractive to a beetle, perhaps its pollen drop is a little sweeter. Its cone tissue a little softer, might get visited more often. And if it gets visited more often, the chances of this accidental, successful pollination increase exponentially. That plant has found a tiny edge over its neighbors who rely solely on the wind. It will reproduce more successfully, and its offspring will inherit the very traits that made it so attractive: the sweeter sap, the softer cone. A whisper of an idea begins to take root in the deep time of plant genetics. What if this wasn't an accident? What if the plant could encourage this behavior? What if it could offer the beetle a reward, a payment for its delivery services? This is a revolutionary thought for a silent, stationary kingdom. It is the beginning of advertising. The plant begins to invest more energy in the reward. The sugary drop becomes a more reliable offering. The pollen itself, once just a vehicle for genes, becomes a food source. It is rich in protein, and some plants begin to produce more of it than is needed for the wind, an offering for their new six-legged partners. A new dynamic is being born, a shift from passive chance to active invitation. The relationship is still clumsy. The beetles are destructive. They trample the delicate ovules. They eat the very seeds the plant is trying to create. They are, at best, unreliable employees who eat the merchandise. This sets up a new evolutionary challenge, a delicate puzzle for the plant to solve. How do you invite a hungry guest into your most sacred chamber, the chamber of new life, without them destroying everything? How do you offer a reward while protecting your most precious treasure? The plant needs a safe. It needs a vault. It needs a way to separate the bribe from the baby. This single critical problem will lead to the next great leap, the anatomical innovation that will define the modern world of plants and truly pave the way for the flower. A new bargain was being struck. A co-evolutionary dance was about to begin. But first, the plant had to solve a most delicate problem: how to invite a guest for dinner without letting them eat the house. Section 4. The secret within the seed. The problem lingers in the air, a puzzle set by nature itself. How to protect the future while embracing the present. How to host a hungry, destructive guest and have it serve your most delicate purpose. The plant kingdom, in its slow, collective, and unconscious wisdom, pondered this dilemma for millions of years. The solution, when it arrived, was not a thunderclap of creation, not a sudden new invention. It was a whisper of genius, a subtle act of repurposing, a quiet architectural masterpiece that would change the world. It was the invention of privacy. To understand this revolution, we must look not at something new, but at something ancient and fundamental: the leaf. For eons, the leaf had one primary job: to be a solar panel, to unfurl itself to the sun, to breathe in the light and air, and through the quiet miracle of photosynthesis, to create the sugars that are the currency of life. But evolution is a great tinkerer. It never throws a good design away. It finds new uses for old parts. Imagine in your mind's eye a special kind of leaf, not the one that just gathers light, but a sporophylla leaf tasked with the sacred duty of bearing the next generation. In the ancient gymnosperms, these leaves were flattened, woody scales, clustered together to form a cone, with the ovules, the potential seeds, sitting exposed upon their surface. Vulnerable, open to the elements, and open to the clumsy, chewing mouthparts of a hungry beetle. Now picture a slow geological ballet. Over countless generations, a new instruction begins to be written into the genetic code of a particular lineage of plants. This special leaf begins to do something it has never done before. It begins to fold. Imagine the edges of the leaf, slowly, imperceptibly, curling inward, like two hands coming together to cup a precious, flickering flame. It is a gesture of sheltering, of creating a sanctuary. The leaf folds in on itself, and its edges meet, and then they fuse. They seal shut. What was once an open surface has become a closed vessel, a chamber, tiny, perfect, living vault. This folded, sealed leaf is called the carpel, and the protected space within it is the ovary. And inside that ovary, safe and sound, are the ovules. The naked seed is naked no longer. It is clothed in a protective green wall. This is the birth of the angiosperm. The very word means vessel seed, and it is the key to everything that comes next. This single, simple act of folding a leaf over created a profound separation. It solved the beetle's problem. The plant now had a way to cleanly divide the transaction. On the outside of this new vault, it could offer its rewards, could produce extra pollen as a protein-rich snack, could, in time, learn to secrete a sugary drop of nectar. The beetle, or any other visiting creature, could come and feast on these offerings without ever touching, or even seeing, the precious ovules tucked away inside. The deal was now clean. Here is your payment. My treasure is locked away. But this vault did more than just protect. It created a new level of control. It created a gatekeeper. With the ovules now hidden away inside the ovary, the pollen could no longer arrive directly. It needed a new landing place, a new point of entry. And so, the very tip of this folded leaf, the carpel, evolved into a specialized structure. The stigma. Picture it as a soft, often feathery or sticky velvet landing pad. It is the gatehouse to the sanctuary. When our accidental courier, the beetle, now dusted with pollen, arrives at this new kind of plant, it crawls around on the outside. And as it does, it brushes against this sticky stigma. The pollen grains adhere to it. The delivery has been made to the front door. But the journey is not over. In fact, the most remarkable part has just begun. The pollen grain, now resting on the stigma, must prove its worth. It must be the right species, it must be healthy, it must be vigorous. The stigma acts as a chemical checkpoint, recognizing the pollen of its own kind. If the pollen is accepted, it begins a miraculous process. It germinates. It grows a tiny, microscopic tube, the pollen tube, which begins to burrow its way down through a stalk connecting the stigma to the ovary, a structure called the style. This is an incredible journey. A microscopic tunnel, excavated by a single grain of pollen, navigating through the plant's own tissue, guided by chemical signals, all to reach the waiting ovule deep inside the protected chamber. It is a race. Often, many pollen grains land on the stigma, and they all begin to grow their tubes. Only the fastest, strongest, most compatible tube will reach an ovule first and achieve fertilization. This is no longer the shotgun blast of the wind. This is no longer the clumsy accident of a hungry beetle on an open cone. This is a system of immense sophistication. The plant is no longer a passive victim or a lucky gambler. It is now an active participant, a gatekeeper, a filter. It is selecting the best possible father for its offspring. It has taken control of its own destiny in a way its gymnosperm ancestors never could. This single innovation, the enclosed ovarius, the foundation upon which the entire world of flowers would be built. It was the crucial security upgrade that allowed for the evolution of more complex and intimate relationships with animal pollinators. By creating a safe, it allowed the plant to develop a more tempting and reliable bribe. It created the possibility of a true partnership, a contract between two kingdoms. Rest with this thought for a moment. The profound elegance of this solution, the simple folding of a leaf that created a whole new world of possibility. For now, this structure is still just green. It is functional, it is safe, it is revolutionary, but it is not yet beautiful in the way we think of a flower. It is a secure fortress, but it has no banner. It is a magnificent stage, but it has no colored lights. The next step in this grand, unfolding story is to send an invitation, to create a signal, to turn this marvel of engineering into a beacon that could be seen from afar, a signpost that cries out to the world. Here is a reward. Here is sweetness. Here is life. The vault was built. Now it was time to advertise. Section 5. A leaf that learned to beckon. Let your mind rest on this image. The green secret vault. This quiet masterpiece of biological security, the enclosed ovary, now holds the future safe from harm. The plant has solved the problem of protection. But in doing so, it has created a new one, the problem of obscurity. The treasure is now so well hidden, the feast so securely locked away, that the intended guests, the bumbling beetles and other ancient insects, might pass by without ever knowing it is there. A fortress is useless without a gate, and a gate is useless if no one can find it. The plant, rooted to the spot, unable to call out, needed to create a sign. It needed to learn a new language, not of chemistry, but of light. It needed to invent the art of the invitation. Once again, evolution, the patient artist, did not conjure a solution from thin air. It looked to its most trusted and versatile tool, the leaf, the humble, hard-working leaf. For millions of years, The leaf had been the plant's engine, its solar sail, its tireless servant dedicated to the quiet, constant work of turning sunlight into life. Now it would be asked to perform a new and far more flamboyant role. Imagine a group of these early angiosperms. They are still modest, perhaps low-growing shrubs in the understory of the great fern and conifer forests. Their reproductive parts, the precious carpels, are clustered together. And surrounding these carpels are other leaves, ordinary green photosynthesizing leaves, doing their ordinary everyday work. But within the vast genetic library of life, change is the only constant. A tiny, random mutation occurs in one of these plants. It is a subtle tweak in the code that controls leaf development. As a result, the leaves closest to the reproductive organs grow differently. Perhaps they are a little smaller. Perhaps they are a little thinner. Or perhaps, and this is the key, they fail to produce the normal, rich amount of chlorophyll. They are born pale, a sickly, creamy white, or a faint, ghostly green. In a world that is an endless, monotonous ocean of verdant green, this pale anomaly is a shock. It is a break in the pattern. It is a visual stutter. To our modern eyes, attuned to a kaleidoscope of color, it might seem insignificant. But to a creature whose entire visual field is green and brown, this pale patch would stand out like a single candle in a dark room. Let's return to our beetle, our unwitting courier. It is still flying on its random, food-seeking journeys. Its vision is not sharp like a hawk's, but it is sensitive to contrast. As it moves through the forest understory, it sees the usual wall of green, and then it spots it, a small, pale blotch, an island of non-green in a sea of green. It is novel. It is strange. And for an insect, novelty often invites investigation. Driven by a simple, pre-programmed curiosity, the beetle alters its course. It lands on this strange, pale leaf. And what does it find? It finds that this pale leaf is right next to the source of the food it loves. The pollen is here. That sweet, sticky pollination drop is here. The beetle has stumbled upon the jackpot, not by randomly smelling it from afar, but by seeing a visual cue that led it straight to the prize. It feasts, and as it does, it once again becomes coated in pollen. When it flies away, its simple brain has begun to forge a powerful new connection. The memory is not complex. It is a basic association. Pale shape means food. Now, the other half of this evolutionary handshake takes place. The plant with the pale leaves has succeeded. It has drawn in a courier. It has been successfully pollinated. It will now produce more seeds than its uniformly green neighbors. And those seeds carry the genetic instruction for the very same pale leaves. The next generation will have more pale-leaved plants. And the beetle? The individuals in the beetle population that are slightly better at noticing this contrast, the ones whose simple nervous systems are more attuned to seeking out this anomaly, will find more food. They will be more successful. They will have more offspring. And their offspring will inherit this heightened sensitivity. This is the engine of coevolution, beginning to turn. A gentle, reciprocal shaping of two entirely different species. Over thousands, then millions of years, this feedback loop refines the signal. The plants with the palest leaves are the most successful, so the leaves become whiter, or perhaps develop other pigments, faint yellows or pinks, that were always there but previously masked by the dominant green of chlorophyll. They are sacrificing their ability to photosynthesize. These leaves are no longer primarily energy producers. They are now full-time advertisers. They have become petals. Picture this first, archaic flower. It is not the perfectly symmetrical, delicate thing we know today. It is likely a more rugged, simple affair. A spiral of these pale, leaf-like petals, perhaps still thick and tough, arranged around the central cluster of protected carpels. It might look more like a magnolia, one of the most ancient lineages of flowering plants. A tough, simple, bowl-shaped beacon designed to accommodate a clumsy, crawling beetle. The petals form a landing platform, a welcoming cup that guides the insect toward the central rewards. This was a profound declaration. The plant was no longer hiding. It was broadcasting its presence. It was hoisting a flag. It was a pale star, shining in the deep green daytime sky of the Cretaceous period. For the first time, the planet's vegetation had a focal point. The uniform, democratic green was broken by a deliberate, beckoning shape. This visual signal changed the relationship from an accident to an appointment. The insect was no longer just a thief stumbling upon a prize. It was now a guest, invited by a signpost painted in a color other than green. This simple, pale flower was a revolution in communication. It was the first word in a long and beautiful conversation between the plants and the animals. The visual invitation was now in place. A beacon had been lit. But to make the partnership truly binding, to ensure the guest would not only arrive but would return, again and again, the reward itself had to be perfected. The plant had invented the signpost. Now it had to perfect the art of the bribe, to brew a currency so sweet, so irresistible, that it would forge an unbreakable bond and fuel an explosion of life and color unlike anything the world had ever seen. Section 6. The Currency of Sweetness. Stay with this image of the first pale flower, a lonely star in a galaxy of green. It is a signpost, a promise. But a promise must be kept. An invitation implies a welcome, and a welcome implies hospitality. The visual signal, this new petal, was a stroke of genius, but on its own it was just an empty gesture. The relationship between the plant and the insect was still one-sided, a transaction based on the insect's hunger for the plant's own vital tissues, or for the very pollen it was meant to transport. It was a fragile alliance at best. For the partnership to become something more, for it to become a true, binding contract, the plant needed to offer a better form of payment. It needed to invent a currency. The problem with pollen as a food source is that it is incredibly expensive. Imagine paying your messenger with bricks of gold from your own vault. Pollen is not just dust. Each grain is a complex biological vessel, packed with proteins, lipids, and the plant's own precious genetic code. To produce it in such vast quantities that it could serve as both food and the agent of fertilization was an immense drain on the plant's resources. It was inefficient. The plant needed to create a reward that was cheap to make but highly valuable to the recipient. It needed to invent fast food. It needed to brew a love potion. It needed to create nectar. Like the petal, nectar was not born from nothing. It was another masterful act of repurposing. All plants have a vascular system, a network of veins that transport water and sugars, the products of photosynthesis, from the leaves to every other part of the plant. It is the plant's lifeblood. At times, this sugary sap might leak from a small wound, or be excreted from tiny glands called hydatodes, which are normally used to release excess water. The ancient ancestors of flowers, in their constant, quiet experimentation, found a new use for these tiny glands. Picture a small gland at the base of one of the new, pale petals. Through a tiny genetic shift, it begins to excrete not just water, but a slightly more concentrated solution of the plant's own sugary sap. Tiny, glistening droplet appears. It is mostly water with a simple blend of sucrose, fructose, and glucose. To the plant, the cost is minimal. It is tapping into its main power grid and siphoning off a tiny fraction of the energy. But to an insect, this droplet is everything. It is pure liquid energy. It is rocket fuel. Unlike pollen, which requires digestion to unlock its nutrients, this sugary water is immediately absorbable, a direct injection of calories. It is the most efficient energy source an insect could ever hope to find. Let your consciousness once again join our beetle, or perhaps now a new player on the scene, an ancient species of fly, drawn in by the strange, pale shape of this new flower. It lands, expecting the usual meal of tough pollen. But it senses something else. A faint, sweet scent on the air. A chemical signal that speaks directly to the most ancient and powerful drive in any living creature. The need for energy. It follows this scent to the base of the petals, and there it finds it. A hidden wellspring. A tiny, shimmering bead of liquid. It touches the droplet with its mouthparts. The taste is a revelation. A burst of pure sweetness, of life, of power. In a world of tough leaves and protein-rich but hard-to-digest pollen, this is a miracle. The insect drinks its fill. This single, tiny sip of nectar might contain enough energy to power its flight for another hour, to help it escape a predator, to fuel its search for a mate. The simple brain is flooded with a powerful, positive reinforcement. This place is good. This shape, this color, this scent, it all leads to the greatest reward imaginable. Now look at where the plant has placed this prize. It is not offered freely on the edge of a petal. It is hidden deep within the flower's architecture, in a special gland called a nectary. To reach it, the insect must push past the flower's reproductive organs. It must crawl over the anthers, which are laden with pollen. As it shoves its way toward the sweet reward, its body becomes thoroughly dusted with the yellow powder. Then, to leave, it must crawl back out, brushing past the sticky, receptive stigma at the center. The genius of this design is its deliberate nature. The plant has created a bribe, and then placed that bribe in a location that forces the visitor to perform the exact service required. It is no longer an accident. It is a carefully engineered transaction. The insect, in its single-minded pursuit of the nectar, becomes a highly efficient, targeted delivery drone. It gets a drink of high-energy fuel, and the plant gets its pollen delivered directly to the doorstep of another flower. This is the moment the contract is truly signed. Contract written in sugar. This new currency, nectar, cemented the alliance between the plant and animal kingdoms. It transformed the relationship from one of theft and accident to one of mutual benefit, of exquisite codependence. The consequences of this invention were staggering. For the plant, it was liberating. No longer having to produce mountains of pollen as a food source, it could conserve that energy. It could now invest it elsewhere, into creating larger, more vibrant petals to be seen from further away, into producing more nectar to attract more visitors, or into developing more numerous or robust seeds, increasing its reproductive success. For the insects, this new, reliable, high-octane food source was a catalyst for an evolutionary explosion of their own. This liquid diet favored new kinds of mouthparts, not just the clumsy, chewing mandibles of a beetle, but specialized, straw-like proboscises for sipping. It fueled the evolution of flies, wasps, and, eventually, the ultimate nectar specialists, the bees and the butterflies. The air, once silent, was beginning to fill with the hum and buzz of these new, energized couriers, flitting from flower to flower, their lives now inextricably linked to this sweet, liquid gold. The invention of nectar was the economic engine that would power the age of flowers. It was the simple, brilliant innovation that turned a passive plant into an active partner in the dance of life. With a visual signal now in place and a powerful, irresistible reward on offer, the stage was set for an explosion of creativity. The basic blueprint of the flower was complete. Now the artists could get to work. The world was about to be painted in colors it had never known, scented with perfumes it had never smelled, and filled with a diversity of forms that would beget even more diversity in a beautiful, spiraling cascade of co-creation. Section 7. An explosion of scent and color. The contract has been signed in sugar. The alliance is forged. But a successful idea in the world of nature quickly breeds competition. Let your mind's eye drift over this burgeoning Cretaceous landscape. The first pale flowers, once so unique, are now becoming a common sight. The once revolutionary beacon of white or faint yellow is now just one among many. A forest that was once a sea of green is now dotted with these new, pale islands of promise. For the pollinators, the beetles, and the flies, this is a world of abundance. But for the plants, it is a growing problem. It is the problem of a crowded marketplace where every shop has the same sign. An insect, drawn to a pale shape, might visit a flower of one species, get a drink of nectar, and then fly to a pale flower of a completely different species. The pollen it carries from the first flower is now wasted, delivered to an incompatible partner. The plant's precious genetic message has been delivered to the wrong address. The system, once so elegant, is becoming noisy and inefficient again. For this coevolutionary dance to progress, the plant needed to do more than just send an invitation. It needed to make that invitation specific. It needed to create a private channel, a signal meant only for its most dedicated and efficient partners. It needed to stand out from the crowd. And so began one of the most magnificent artistic movements in the history of the planet. The great diversification of the flower. The world was about to be painted. The first tool was color. The ghostly whites and pale creams were a good start, but they were just the absence of green. The plant's genetic toolkit contained the recipes for so much more. Deep within the DNA of these plants lay the instructions for creating pigments, molecules that could absorb certain wavelengths of light and reflect others. These were ancient chemical pathways, used for millennia in subtle ways, perhaps to protect young leaves from harsh sun, or as part of the plant's immune response. Now they were repurposed for the grand art of advertising. A new family of pigments, the carotenoids, was put to work in the petals. These are the molecules of fire and sunlight. They painted the first true yellows onto the world, the color of dandelions and sunflowers. They brewed the first oranges, the shade of a ripe fruit, a color that screamed of sugar and energy. Then came the anthocyanins, a group of pigments that were masters of the cool end of the spectrum. Depending on the subtle chemistry within the petal, they could create a breathtaking range of hues. They could create a delicate, blushing pink. They could deepen into a startling, vibrant Rita color of lifeblood and urgency. And they could unlock the most regal and mysterious of colors, the blues and the violets. Imagine the effect on the world. A landscape that for hundreds of millions of years had only known the hues of earth and vegetation was suddenly splashed with a dot of impossible blue, a flash of brilliant yellow, a streak of defiant red. Each new color was a new advertisement, a new brand identity. A plant that developed a unique color was creating a distinct signal. An insect could now learn to associate a specific color with a reliable reward. The yellow one always has the best nectar. The blue one is the easiest to land on. This improved what biologists call pollinator constancy, the tendency of an insect to visit only one type of flower during a foraging trip. It was making the delivery service more reliable, ensuring the pollen went to the right recipient. And these colors were not chosen at random. They were tailored to the eyes of the intended audience. Many insects, like beetles, are not particularly good at seeing red. To them, a red flower might just appear as a dark, uninteresting shape. But birds, who would later evolve into major pollinators, have excellent color vision, especially in the red spectrum. So a plant that evolved red petals was effectively creating a private, bird-only channel, filtering out the less efficient insect visitors. Bees, on the other hand, see the world differently than we do. Their vision extends into the ultraviolet range of light. A flower that appears plain white or yellow to us might, to a bee, be painted with intricate, glowing patterns of UV light, a secret language written in a color we cannot perceive. These patterns, now called nectar guides, often form lines or bullseyes, acting as glowing runway lights that guide the bee directly to the center of the flower where the nectar and pollen await. But sight was not the only sense to be seduced. An even more ancient and powerful language was being perfected: the language of scent. A color is a signal that works only in daylight and at a close range. But a scent is a whisper that can travel on the wind, a message that can move through the dark, an invisible map that can lead a creature from miles away. Plants began to brew complex cocktails of volatile organic compounds, tiny molecules, so light they could float on the air. Each flower developed its own signature perfume. It was a new and profound form of communication. Imagine the air in these Cretaceous forests, once smelling only of damp earth and resin, now beginning to carry new, strange, and beautiful messages. There were the light, sweet, floral scents, designed to attract the bees and the flies of the daytime. There were the spicier, heavier perfumes, perhaps attractive to certain kinds of beetles. And then, there was the magic of the night. Picture the scene. The sun sets over the giant fern trees. The air cools. The daytime flowers close up, their colors fading into the gloom. A hush falls. And then, a new kind of flower, one that has remained tightly shut and inconspicuous all day, begins to unfurl. It is a night-blooming species, perhaps a relative of the modern evening primrose or moonflower. Its petals are a ghostly, luminous white, the better to catch the faint starlight and moonlight. And as it opens, it releases its secret. A heavy, sweet, intoxicating perfume floods the night air. This scent is a summons. It is a call for the creatures of the dark. A hawk moth, with its long, delicate proboscis, awakens. It lifts its antennae, tasting the air, and it catches this single, unmistakable thread of scent. It is a perfume it knows, a promise of a deep well of nectar. The moth takes flight, its wings beating in a silent hum, and follows this invisible road through the darkness, navigating by scent alone, until it finds the pale, glowing cup of the flower, a ghost in the nighttime forest, waiting just for it. This is a level of intimacy, of specialization, that was unimaginable in the old world of wind and chance. The flower had become a multisensory masterpiece. Color was the billboard seen from a distance. Scent was the personal invitation, whispered on the breeze. The shape of the petals was the landing pad, and the nectar was the perfect, unforgettable reward. This explosion of diversity was not for our benefit. We were not yet here to see it. It was a vast, competitive, creative arms race, driven by the simple need to be noticed by a bee, a fly, a moth, a beetle. The world was being decorated, perfumed, and utterly transformed, not by a grand designer, but by the quiet, collective, and relentless conversation between a flower and its chosen courier. Section 8. The intricate dance of coevolution. The world is now a gallery of vibrant, scented invitations. The air hums with the traffic of newly specialized couriers. But the conversation between plant and pollinator is becoming ever more nuanced, more private. It is moving beyond a general advertisement to a deeply personal dialogue. This is the realm of coevolution, where two species become locked in a reciprocal, evolutionary embrace, each one acting as a key that can only unlock the other. They begin to shape each other's bodies, their behaviors, their very existence, in an intricate and beautiful dance that spans millions of years. Let us move away from the generalist flowers, the open, bowl-shaped magnolias that welcome any clumsy beetle. Let's look closer at the specialists, the plants that have decided to go into business with only one or two trusted partners. By narrowing their clientele, They ensure that their pollen is delivered with the utmost precision. But to do this, they must change their shape, creating new and complex architectures that only their chosen partner can navigate. Consider the evolution of a flower like a snapdragon or an orchid. It is no longer a simple cup. It has become a puzzle. Its petals have fused into a complex, tubular structure. The entrance is a narrow slit, or perhaps it is closed shut by a pair of lips that require a certain weight and strength to push open. A small, lightweight fly might land on this flower and find it impenetrable. A beetle might be too clumsy to find the opening. The nectar is locked away, inaccessible to all but the intended guest. But then a bumblebee arrives. It is a large, powerful insect. Its weight is precisely what is needed to depress the lower petal, the landing pad, which then springs open like a secret door. The bee and only the bee can enter. As it pushes its way inside, following the nectar guides toward the sweetness hidden deep within, the flower's structure ensures a perfect, mechanical interaction. A lever is tripped. The anthers, holding the pollen, swing down and deposit their golden dust precisely on the bee's furry back, in a spot it cannot easily groom off. The bee gets its nectar, backs out, the secret door swings shut behind it, and it flies away, carrying the pollen like a carefully placed package. When it visits the next snapdragon and forces its way inside, its pollen-dusted back will brush perfectly against the receptive stigma, completing the act of pollination. This is not chance. This is biological clockwork. The flower has evolved into a machine perfectly calibrated to the size, weight, and behavior of a single type of insect. And in return, the bee population has been shaped by the flower. Bees with slightly longer tongues might get more nectar, and thus be more successful. Bees that are better at remembering the location of these specific flowers will thrive. The flower and the bee are sculpting one another. Or imagine, in your mind's eye, a long, elegant, trumpet-shaped flower, perhaps a brilliant red or orange, hanging downwards. It has almost no scent. It offers no landing platform. It seems to be a fortress. It is closed for business to the bees and the beetles. But it is not waiting for an insect. It is waiting for a bird. A hummingbird appears, a shimmering, iridescent jewel of a creature, a being that seems more like a dream than an animal. It does not land. It hovers. Its wings beat in a blur, a living engine suspended in mid-air. It sees the brilliant Rita color that signals the high-energy reward to its avian eyes. Its long, needle-thin beak is the perfect key for this floral lock. It inserts its beak deep into the flower's throat, a perfect fit. Inside, its long tongue darts out, lapping up the copious, watery nectar the flower has produced specifically to meet the high metabolic needs of a hovering bird. And as it feeds, the flower has its own mechanism. The anthers are placed at the very top of the trumpet. They brush pollen not onto the bird's body, but onto its forehead or the top of its beak. When the hummingbird retreats and flies to the next red trumpet, this dusting of pollen will be transferred precisely to the stigma, which is also perfectly positioned to receive it. The flower has shaped the feeding habits of the bird, and the bird's beak has shaped the depth and form of the flower. They are two halves of a single, functional whole. This dance can become even more strange and more intimate. Consider the bizarre and wonderful case of the yucca plant and the yucca moth. The yucca flower is a pale, bell-shaped blossom that opens only at night, its scent calling out in the dark. The female yucca moth is its only pollinator. But she does not come just to drink. She comes to lay her eggs. She flies to a yucca flower and, using specialized mouthparts, she deliberately gathers a ball of sticky pollen from the anthers. She then flies to another yucca flower. But before she pollinates it, she performs another critical act. She pierces the wall of the flower's ovary, that precious, protected vault and lays a few of her eggs inside, among the ovules. Her larvae will hatch inside this safe, protected nursery and will feed on the developing yucca seeds. This sounds like parasitism. It sounds like she is destroying the very future she is supposed to help create. But then, after she has laid her eggs, she does something truly remarkable. She climbs to the top of the flower's stigma and deliberately, purposefully, presses the ball of pollen she collected into its receptive surface, pollinating the flower. She is a conscious farmer. She is ensuring that the flower will produce seeds, because her own children need those seeds to survive. She only lays a few eggs, ensuring that enough seeds will remain to create the next generation of yucca plants. This is a pact of mutual survival, a level of cooperation so profound it blurs the line between two separate organisms. The moth cannot survive without the yucca's seeds, and the yucca plant can produce no seeds at all without this one single species of moth. Their destinies are completely intertwined, a story of sacrifice and creation written over millennia. This intricate dance, this specialization, has driven the astonishing diversity we see in both the flowering plants and the animal kingdom. Every strange petal, every complex tube, every specific scent and color tells the story of a unique relationship, a private conversation. It is a testament to the power of cooperation. The world was being rebuilt, not by conflict and competition alone, but by these beautiful, intricate, and deeply entangled partnerships. Section 9. How flowers remade the world. Let us now gently pull our focus back. Back from the intimate portrait of the bee and the snapdragon, back from the moonlit dance of the moth and the yucca. Let us ascend, your consciousness rising like a silent drone, until these individual, beautiful partnerships blur into a vast, planetary mosaic. We have been watching the skilled musicians tune their instruments. Now it is time to listen to the sound of the full orchestra. For the rise of the flower was not just a revolution in the plant kingdom. It was an event that would fundamentally rewrite the rules of life on Earth, changing the land, the air, and the very course of animal evolution. The story begins where the flower's own life seems to end. The vibrant petals, their job of seduction complete, wither and fall away like discarded silk. The stamens dry up. The brief, brilliant life of the blossom is over. But this is not an ending. It is a transformation. For at the flower's heart, deep within the safety of the ovary, fertilization has occurred. And now a new genetic instruction takes over. The ovary begins to swell. It draws energy from the parent plant, its walls thickening, its cells dividing, its chemistry shifting. It is becoming something new. It is becoming a fruit. This is the second great promise of the angiosperm. The first was the flower, an invitation to a pollinator. The second is the fruit contact. For a while, we have focused on the private conversations, the secret handshakes between a single flower and its chosen partner. But now let us pull our awareness back, lifting it high above the forest floor, high above the canopy, until we can see the whole continent, the entire planet, bathed in the light of the Cretaceous sun. From this vantage point, we can begin to see that this was not just a collection of individual deals. The rise of the flower was a global event, a quiet and beautiful coup d'état that would fundamentally remake the world, changing its very geology, its climate, and the course of life itself. The first and most profound change began where our last story left off, inside that protected vault, the ovary. After the bee has flown away, after the hummingbird has vanished, after the pollen tube has completed its miraculous journey, the flower's work is not done. In fact, a new chapter is just beginning. The bright petals, their job of seduction complete, begin to wither and fall away, like discarded party decorations. The flower as we knew it dies, but the ovary at its heart does the opposite. quickens. Fueled by a surge of hormonal signals, it begins to swell, to transform. It is no longer just a safe. It is becoming a treasure chest. This transformed ovary is the fruit. This was the second great innovation of the angiosperms. The first was the flower to bring a pollinator in. The second was the fruit to send the next generation away. The naked seed of the conifer simply falls to the ground to compete for light and water in the deep shadow of its own parent. But the angiosperm seed, nestled inside its fleshy, nutritious fruit, was part of a new, brilliant strategy. It was a bribe for a different kind of partner. Not a pollinator, but a seed disperser. The plant poured its precious sugars not into nectar now, but into the pulp of this developing fruit. It imbued it with vitamins, with water, with irresistible flavor. It wrapped it in a skin that, when ripe, would often change color, from a camouflaged green to a vibrant red, or yellow, or purple. Another signal, another advertisement, this time crying out, "I am ready, I am sweet, I am a worthy reward." And so a new contract was offered, not to a delicate moth, but perhaps to a clumsy, early mammal, a small, shrew-like creature moving through the undergrowth, or to a prehistoric bird. They were not invited for their gentle touch, but for their hunger and their mobility. The animal would eat the sweet, fleshy fruit, and in doing so swallow the tough, indigestible seeds hidden within. It would then wander off miles away from the parent plant, and later, in its droppings, it would deposit the seed, perfectly planted in its own small mound of fertilizer, far from its parent, ready to start a new life in a new territory. This invention of the fruit, this traveling nursery, was a world-changing event. It allowed flowering plants to conquer new territories with astonishing speed. It gave them a mobility their gymnosperm ancestors could only dream of. And in doing so, it created a new economy of energy on the planet. This sudden, massive abundance of sugary, nutritious fruit fueled an explosion in the diversity of fruit-eating animals. The evolution of many bird and mammal lineages is inextricably tied to this new food source. They grew larger, more specialized, more numerous, all thanks to the generosity of the flower. A whole new layer was added to the food web, creating a more complex, resilient, and interconnected ecosystem. But the flower's influence ran even deeper. It changed the very soil beneath our feet. Think of the ancient conifer forests. They are slow, stoic giants. They hold onto their needles for years. Their life cycle is measured in centuries. When they die, their tough, resinous wood decays slowly. The turnover of nutrients is glacial. Now, consider the world of the angiosperms. Many of them adopted a different strategy. Live fast, die young. Think of the annual wildflowers that sprout, bloom, set seed, and die all in one season. Think of the deciduous trees, the oaks and maples that would evolve later. They grow their leaves, use them for a season, and then, in a spectacular blaze of autumn color, they drop them. This constant shedding of leaves, flowers, and fruits created a rich, thick layer of organic matter on the forest floor. This material, this humus, decayed quickly, creating a dynamic, nutrient-rich soil that was far more fertile than the acidic soil of a pine forest. They became the planet's great composters, constantly recycling life back into the earth, making it richer for everyone. This new kind of forest, a broadleaf, deciduous forest, was a new kind of world. It had a different quality of light, a shifting seasonal rhythm. In the spring, the floor would be open to the sun, allowing for an explosion of smaller flowers. In the summer, it would be a deep, dappled shade. In the autumn, the canopy would rain down a fire of crimson and gold. This created countless new niches, new homes, new ways of life for animals, insects, and other plants. And the changes were even more profound. These new angiosperm trees, with their broad leaves, were far more efficient at transpiration process of drawing water up through their roots and releasing it as vapor into the atmosphere. A forest of millions of these trees acts like a giant, living humidifier, influencing local weather patterns, increasing humidity, and even encouraging rainfall. They became engines of the water cycle, and their roots, often finer and more densely matted than those of the gymnosperms, held the soil together with a new tenacity. This had a surprising effect on the very shape of the land. Before the rise of flowers, rivers were often wide, shallow, and braided, constantly shifting their course across loose, unstable soil. But as angiosperms colonized the riverbanks, their roots acted like a living net, holding the banks firm. The rivers became more stable. They began to meander in deep, looping curves, creating stable floodplains, rich wetlands, and the fertile river valleys that would one day become the cradles of human civilization. Think of it. This small, delicate thing, the flower, with its petals and its nectar, set in motion a chain of events that created fruit, which fed the rise of birds and mammals, created new, richer soils. It changed the very quality of the forests. It helped humidify the air and stabilize the courses of rivers. It was a planet-scale terraforming project, executed not with brute force, but with the quiet, irresistible power of beauty, seduction, and cooperation. The green world had been remade, painted in new colors, and prepared for the next chapter of life, a chapter that would eventually include us. Section 10. The Echo of the First Petal. And so we arrive here, in this present moment. Let your awareness drift gently back from that deep geological time, back through the ages of mammals and ice, back to the world you know, back to this room, to the soft bed you are resting on, to the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. The epic journey is complete. The planet has been repainted, re-engineered, and perfumed by the quiet revolution of the flower. And now, at the very end of this long, unbroken chain of life, we find ourselves. We are the inheritors of this beautiful world, the latecomers to a party that has been in full swing for 140 million years. The first human eyes that opened on this planet did not open to a world of monotonous green. They opened to a world already adorned, to fields of wildflowers, to forests hung with fruit, to landscapes already sculpted by the partnership between plant and pollinator. The flower was not something we had to imagine. It was simply there, a fundamental part of the reality we were born into. It was a gift waiting for us, and we, in our turn, have been shaped by it. The echo of that very first pale petal, that first brave signal in a world of green, resonates within our own consciousness, in our cultures, in our art, and in our deepest metaphors for life itself. We may not depend on a flower for pollination in the way a bee does, but our spirits, our emotions, our very languages are inextricably entangled with its legacy. Think of how we use flowers. They are our chosen messengers for the things we cannot easily say. When we cannot find the words for love, for passion, for a new beginning, we offer a rose. Its deep red petals a silent poem. Its thorns a reminder that beauty and pain are often intertwined. When we want to express sympathy, to acknowledge a loss that is too profound for speech, we offer a white lily, its pale, trumpet-like form a symbol of purity, of peace, of a soul's dignified journey into the unknown. When we want to celebrate a friendship, to offer simple, uncomplicated joy, we give a bouquet of bright yellow sunflowers or daisies, their open faces like small, captured suns. The flower has become our vocabulary for emotion. We speak of relationships blossoming. We call a time of great success and happiness a golden age or a flowering of culture. We refer to our children, our most precious next generation, as the flower of our youth. And when we feel fragile, we might call ourselves a shrinking violet. These are not just convenient phrases. They are deep, instinctual connections we have made with the natural world, recognizing the flower's life cycle, the vulnerable bud, the glorious bloom. The inevitable decay is a mirror for our own. Look at our art. From the delicate lotus flowers carved into ancient Egyptian tombs, symbolizing rebirth and the eternal cycle of the sun, to the vibrant irises of Van Gogh, electric with life and a desperate, beautiful intensity. We have painted them, sung about them, written poetry about them, and woven their shapes into our architecture and our fabrics. Why? Why this constant fascination? Perhaps because the flower represents a perfect intersection of the functional and the beautiful. It is a miracle of engineering that wears the costume of pure art. It is a symbol of nature's profligate, seemingly unnecessary beauty that exists not for any grand purpose we can define, but simply for its own sake, and for the sake of its partnership with a bee or a moth. It reminds us that not everything in the universe is about cold, hard survival. It tells us that seduction, cooperation, and beauty are evolutionary forces just as powerful as tooth and claw. The journey of the flower is a story of quiet triumph. It is a story of how the small, the delicate, and the cooperative can outcompete the large, the brutish, and the solitary. The great, ancient gymnosperms, the solemn conifers, still exist. They are magnificent survivors, but they are relics of an older world. It is the angiosperms, the flowering plants, that truly rule the earth, accounting for over 80% of all plant life. From the grass beneath our feet, a humble and highly successful flowering plant, to the mightiest oak tree, to the rice and wheat that feed billions of us, we live in a world built and sustained by the descendants of that first brave flower. So as you lie here, on the edge of sleep, hold this story in your mind. The story of a leaf that learned to fold, creating a secret chamber. Of another leaf that grew pale to become a beacon. Of a drop of sugar that became a currency of love. Of a conversation between species that painted the entire planet with color and scent. Every flower you have ever seen, ever touched, ever smelled, is the living result of that 100-million-year journey. It is a small, soft echo of the single greatest aesthetic transformation our world has ever known. It is a reminder that even in a silent, green world, a whisper of a new idea of beauty, of partnership, of connection can grow to change everything. And now, as our journey comes to a peaceful close, there is nothing left to do, nothing to figure out. Allow the story to dissolve, leaving only a sense of wonder. Let the weight of your body feel heavy and supported. Let your mind become quiet and still, like a calm, moonlit pool. The intricate dance of the world will continue without your supervision. You have played your part today. It is time to rest. May your sleep be deep and untroubled, and may your dreams be filled with the quiet, beautiful colors of a world in bloom. Good night.